Welcome to episode 186 of the XS Noize Podcast. I'm Mark Millar. Thanks for listening. In this episode, I speak to multi-instrumentalist Rob Marshall from Humanist about the release of the second album, On the Edge of a Lost and Lonely World. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to Irish songstress Janet Devlin. So check it out, and if you like the podcast, please subscribe in your favourite listening platform, give us a rating, and leave a comment. The second Humanist album, On the Edge of a Lost and Lonely World, is released on the 26th of July. The album showcases the vocal talents of several iconic artists, including Dave Gahan, Isobel Campbell, Ed Harcourt, James Allan, Tim Smith, Peter Hayes, Hancox Rux, and more. This choice cast navigate a masterful expansion of the Humanist sound world, broadening and deepening the terrain first explored on 2020's much-lauded debut album, further consolidating the emergence of Rob Marshall as a songwriter, composer, and producer with a singular musical vision. In this interview, Rob talks about the new album, his relationship with Mark Lanegan, his previous band XS, and lots more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the XS Noize Podcast with Rob Marshall. So hi Rob, welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Thanks, man. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. I'd like to go back to the start.
Yeah.
Can you remember the first band or artist that made you pay attention to music?
Yeah, I was very young. Aside from that, I kind of grew up with Elvis Presley because my mum and dad were just sort of hardcore fans. My dad was a teddy boy. He used to kind of slick his hair back. And so Elvis Presley was massive in our house. But the first band artist was Adam and the Ants. It was Prince Charming. I remember watching Top of the Pops when I was a kid, and I think it was the first paint. Yeah, videos were a massive thing back then as well, weren't they? Top of the Pops was a huge thing in our house. And when I saw Adam Ant, I was just mesmerised by him. Said that I just kind of walked to the TV and just stare at the screen every time, wait for him to come on. Because back then it was on twice a week, I think, wasn't it? And it was like the people were in the charts for weeks and weeks, and then so they played the repeat the tracks that were ever hot at the time. Do you know what I mean? So I just used to tune in to watch that track all the time. I loved it. So that was probably the first thing.
And the video was great. Diana Dors was in the video.
That's right, yeah.
I remember. And then there was the Stand and Deliver video, which I loved too.
Yeah. All those classics. I got to see him actually, kind of came full circle. My friend plays guitar in his band, and when I was doing the video for Shot Collar in New York, Dave was, Adam and the Ants were actually playing that particular night. And so I went down and got on the guest list and went and watched him. It was the first time I seen him. It was fucking great, really good, man.
Yeah, he's still going. He's still going.
Looks amazing as well, doesn't he? He looks so good.
He would be on one of my wish list to see. I would love to see him live.
I was just going to say, Will's such a good guitar player, the guy that plays with him now. I think he's been with him for like 10, 15 years and such a lovely guy, but like really solid.
So what sparked your interest in playing the guitar? When was the first time you picked the guitar up?
To me, guitar was unattainable. It was something that was on the TV. And it's something that it just looked cool. And it was something that I thought I'd love to be able to play. But it was, to me, those were things for superheroes and not things that you were able to get hold of. And then I remember when I was about 12, I saw an Argos catalogue. I was flicking through and I saw a guitar and I was like, fuck. And they were, I remember it was £129 and it came with a little amp and a plectrum. And my were really struggling financially. There were collectors banging on the door, all that kind of shit. But I had it in my head that I really wanted to get one. Whatever happened, even if my parents didn't have enough money for food, they would always make sure that we had, me and my brother, £1.50 every day for our bus money and for our dinner money, £1 for our dinner money, 50p to get to and from school, £1 for our dinner. And basically for 3 months, I saved up all the £1.50s. I walked to and from school and I got 3 paper rounds, and I collected all the money. And when it got to Christmas, because I knew my mum and dad couldn't buy us anything, or they could put money in, but not enough, that I saved enough money that I could buy a guitar, basically. So I gave my mum the money, so she could go off and buy me a guitar for Christmas. And then once I got it, as soon as I got a guitar, I felt it became my entire world, and still is now, really. It's kind of all my self-worth is in music. But yeah, it's always been that way. Like the whole kind of life and music thing kind of wrapped around each other, and they don't separate, they don't disconnect, they're totally connected together. But that's how I got the guitar. And I don't, I hit around a bit. I wasn't very good. I was self-taught for a number of years and just fought away with it. And I didn't really have a musical path that I was on back then. I just didn't, I was just kind of learning, just hitting chords and messing around, really.
Was there any artists or guitarists you were trying to emulate? Not
really. It took me a long time to find out what it was that I wanted to do, because I was so young. There wasn't really, kind of, as well, I've got to kind of be open about the fact that my brother was 2 years older than me, and he hit the Britpop era. So definitely Maybe came out, I think, was 93 or something, the Roses and Primal Scream, and we had a Massive Attack. And so I was kind of like influenced really by him and the music that he was listening to. So I kind of found my way through that, and then I went to buy him a birthday present. I think he was 15 or 16, and he told me he wanted the Verve. What he wanted was urban hymns, and I bought him the Verve EP because I didn't know what I was fucking buying. CDs were just pretty new back then. And I just remember this I went to a record shop and I got this CD, and it was like American import. But I said, "Oh, that's the fucker that he's after." And I wrapped it all up for him, and he opened it up and he was like, "What the fuck's this?" And so he just kind of discarded it. And so I went to the CD player weeks later and stuck it in, and it was Storming Heaven and Gravity Grave and all that. And I kind of just totally immersed myself in that. And I think it was at that point, really, that I started to go, it was just total escapism for me. It was like another fucking world, and a good world that I wanted to connect with, because it felt stratospheric to just my normal mundane life and where I was in the Northeast at the time. And my dad used to get up at 6 a.m. and come in at 6 p.m. And I just thought, fuck that. There's got to be something more than this. And that world and that music just felt like a million miles away from that. And it was magnificent. And through that, I discovered so much different music. And, I was a big fan of John Martin early on. I remember hearing seeing something, and I heard Small Hours on I think it was through TV, and it was just, and I remember hearing that and those kind of volume swells. I don't know if you know that particular track, but
yeah,
again, it seemed of the same DNA to that kind of Verve thing, and it was massive. And through that, anyway, just kind of, it took me a while, but I think that my guitar playing is kind of very much me now. I could hear those early influences being much more predominant in the early years, maybe in Lights of Sleep, which is the first band that I was ever in. But I feel like I've always had my own style, but it took me a little while to kind of really hone in on it and be honest, do you know what I mean, in terms of what it was that I was trying to do, and kind of stand on my own 2 feet with it, you know what I mean? I feel like I definitely do now. I never try and copycat anybody, what's the fucking point of that?
Well, I first heard your guitar playing in your second band, Exicom, which was a big fan of. What were your most memorable moments you experienced with the band, either on tour or in the studio?
Yeah, there was many. Originally, me, Scott, and Simon, who were the bass player and the drummer, we were in a band together. And when the singer from our first band that we were in left, and we were playing around in the room, we had a few ideas that basically became tracks off the first record. But the first time we got Nicky in the room, it kind of felt for the first time that we had something. It just suddenly just lifted to another level. Suddenly, it was like we found our guy. Do you know what I mean? That kind of, and that was kind of a wonderful, significant moment. But there was loads. So we had such a good time. Like it was an amazing experience. We went over to Japan. That was like, I think that was our first gig in Tokyo with Manny. That was amazing. Selling out the Water Rats for the first time, and there being like a huge buzz, and there was like X-Ray, loads of live agents down there, managers at the time, and there was a real massive buzz for us, and it felt like things were going to happen. You know what I mean? It was kind of that tipping point. We hadn't released the first record yet. That was an amazing time. And touring with Echo and the Bunnymen, it's amazing. You know, playing with Doves and all these bands that we love. At the time, I became friends as well. Nick McCabe, who became a fan of the band, and that was quite a 360 moment. It was like the first time really it ever happened that kind of, you know, that point of where you kind of the people that you look towards suddenly. I'm not saying he looked towards me in any way, but he was certainly a fan of the band, and to become friends with somebody that you really loved and respected was kind of like a massive, significant thing. But it was for the majority part, the whole thing was pretty fucking great, to be honest. I was very, always very appreciative of everything that we did. I don't look back on anything really with regret. I think perhaps it probably we tried to drag it along a bit longer than it needed to. It was difficult to sustain it as a band. We were all kind of growing up and going in slightly different directions, and the struggles were kicking in, you know, the financial struggles, and we treated it like a full-time job, and it was a full-time job to us. You know, we all really cared about that band. So it was hard to let it go, because the second album was a difficult one. The way we always wrote in the room together. Of course, like ideas got brought into the room, but it was very much like a jam out an idea. And it took forever. It really did. You know, it was just painstakingly, like, laborious. You know, hence the gap between the first record and the second record. But yeah, it was amazing. I loved Exit Cam.
Yeah, so did I. I mean, Higher Learning, you know, it's absolutely tremendous tune. Do you have a favourite track from your period in the band?
It's weird. I haven't really thought about Exit Cam for such a long time. But I always enjoyed playing We're on Our Own live. I loved Higher Learning. I loved them all. You know, I really did. I loved all the tracks. Probably those, really. But all of them, you know, they were a different beast live as well to what they were on record. You know, a lot of people always, when they heard the first record, they were kind of like, that hadn't seen us play before, would always say, "Oh, I don't know how they'll pull it off live." And everybody that had seen us play before were kind of slightly perhaps disappointed that the first record didn't sound as big as it did live. Do you know what I mean? So it was weird. And it was live. That first record was totally live. We were all playing at the same time, recorded in the same room. And it was all about just getting the right takes. You know, it was totally alien, a different place to work to the way that I'm doing things right now. We were a total band in the room, you know.
After you parted ways with Exicom, how long was it before you got inspired to begin the Humanist project?
So about a year. I put everything, like we all did, but I put everything into that band. By the time it got to the end and the way it kind of like untangled, I was kind of so tired and sick of, for the first time ever, really. I was so kind of tired and sick of the music thing. And I just come out of a big relationship, 14-year relationship with my ex-partner. And I just kind of, I parked my gear up basically in a room. It was all set up, but I never touched it. I'd walk in, look at it, leave the room. And then there was one thing I watched. Do you remember the Shane Meadows documentary on Gavin Clark? Did you see that? You know,
I'm very aware of Shane Meadows stuff. I'm a big fan, but I've never seen that. I've never heard of that.
Well, Gavin used to sing in Uncle, and he had his own projects, and he was a singer-songwriter and very well respected. Him and Shane are like really good friends, and Shane made this documentary on him to kind of try and highlight his genius, of which he was. And I watched that, and my friend John Bryce used to manage Gavin, and John used to manage my first band. So there's all this kind of like, you know, interlocking circles and whatnot. And so I watched this documentary on this night. The next night I woke up and I found out that Gavin had died. I was like, fuck. And from that, I that was the first, I didn't know what to say to John, who's my friend who was looking after him. I always struggle with the kind of wording of these things and think, and I know this sounds probably even more pretentious, what I'm about to say, but for the first time, I switched my guitar amp on and I had a little computer, a little old MacBook down there with a microphone, and I improvised this like gentle 7-minute kind of piece of music. And I thought, it kind of felt like it was right. And so I sent it at the time. I just kind of instinctively went with it. I sent him a message, said, "Hey, John, I don't know what to say, and I'm so sorry." And I just picked up the guitar and played this and thought it may be appropriate. And he sent me a message back, and he was really lovely, saying that it made him cry and blah, blah, blah. And that was the minute that got me back into the music, really, because I kind of connected again with something which was what music means to me. It's a spiritual thing. It's energy. It's the higher being kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Trying to tap into that. And I'd forgotten about that towards the end of XS. It was just all it was all just kind of playing and live and just trying to deal with all the kind of the personalities that were colliding together. Do you know what I mean? In not a very positive way. Through no one's fault, really. In hindsight, it was just all of us kind of reaching a point where we couldn't really continue on, but nobody would say it, or if it was getting said, it wasn't being said in the right way. So yeah, that was kind of the birth, really. It was the starting point from when I thought I'm going to start doing some music again.
The first Humanist album was absolutely amazing. Mark Lanegan was a huge part of the first album. Sadly, we lost Mark in 2022. How did you get involved with Mark, and what was it like working with him on that first album?
So my manager sent his manager at the time an email. I think it was called Kevin Gasser. I had 3 pieces of music that I'd written. One was Kingdom, Gospel, and Skull. And basically asked him if she emailed his manager saying, about a brand new project, would he be interested in doing a collaboration? I didn't think we'd hear anything back. Then suddenly a message came back saying, Mark likes the music. He's up for it. Can you send the tracks, please? So I was like, fuck. I was like, is this guy, is this even real? So I sent the tracks through. I didn't hear anything back. And then this email came through one day with the tracks attached. And I was like, even up to the point I was about to press play, I thought some fucker's winding me up here. There's no way this guy's going to, and because it was just felt too easy. Like he just said yes. I mean, I know his philosophy was that if anybody sends him music, he was a serial collaborator. If you liked it, he'd sing on it. It didn't matter who you were. He said, But yeah, I listened to I was with my manager. We listened to Kingdom first off, and I was like, "Fuck me, it is his voice." And then we heard Gospel, and I was like, "Wow, fuck." And then Skull, and yeah, and that's how it started. Really, it's just as simple as that, And then after that, I sent him an email. So I had this. I mean, I can say it. Well, I mean, I'm not saying his full email address, but not that it matters. But I had this email, and I was like, Is this his email? Because he wasn't communicating. He wasn't saying. There was too much. There was a guy called that was the engineer, and there was Black Sound, an email address called Black Sound. Then there was Old Scratch, and then there was his manager. And I thought it was definitely Black Sound or Old Scratch. So he's one of them. Do you know what I mean? I took a gamble and sent a message to Old Scratch, and saying, "Hey man, look, thank you so much for singing on it. If you ever want me to do any music ever again down the line, please feel free to get in touch." And I just put Killing Joke. I think maybe I put Killing Joke, Joy Division. But the Killing Joke thing was significant. I didn't hear anything back from that. So I thought, maybe it's not his fucking email address. And suddenly it's about 10 days later, an email pops through, Old Scratch. And I was like, what the fuck? And he's like, hey, have you got any leftover Humanist material, basically? And I was like, no. And then that turned into a conversation. And he was like, oh, I'm going in the studio in a week's time. And my friend Allan is producing the record, recording the record. and I'm not happy with the material that I've got. Have you got anything? I said, no, but I'll write something if that. And he went, yeah, anything, man. Just write anything. Killing Joke, he went. I said, yeah, okay, got it. And so I put the phone down. And at the time I was down on my luck. I was working in a kitchen doing like 40 hours, like fucking blagged my way into this job working as a chef, starter chef. And I was like, fuck it, man. I just dropped everything and locked myself away in the studio for like a week. And the first thing I did was the first thing I did, which I thought was like in the vein of Killing Joke, was Nocturne. And as soon as I got Nocturne, which was on became Gargoyle, this record that we did together. Mm-hmm. As soon as I got Nocturne, I was like, yeah, and then I went from Nocturne to Goodbye to Beauty, and it was those two tracks that I thought, all right, like this is it now. And I sent him Nocturne, and he was like, God damn it, man! He was like, send me more. So then I can't do the Lanegan fucking voice, but so I sent him that. Then I sent him Goodbye to Beauty. Then what would become Goodbye to Beauty, Drunk on Destruction, Beehive, Old Swan, and what was the other one? Death's Head Tattoo, yeah. And that became Gargoyle, which I think went on to become one of his best-selling records, actually. So, yeah, that kind of cemented the relationship, really. And then I just continued on. You know, we did Somebody's Knocking. I did 6 tracks off there. And then I was writing with him right up to the end. And he was meant to be on this record, actually, but that didn't end up happening due to whatever things are going off in the Lanegan estate right now. But yeah, he should have been on this record, really. You know, I know he kind of signed off on a track basically that was meant to be on this album called Happy. But yeah, I ended up getting Ed to redo the vocals, which Ed did an amazing job.
The second album, On the Edge of a Lost and Lonely World, is coming out in July. It's absolutely brilliant. It's definitely, as much as the first one was great, this is a complete step up. It continues the themes of life, death, and mortality from the first album. Did you write and record all the music on this album just like you did on the first one? Yeah,
pretty much the same. Just the same equipment, the same kind of bog standard stuff. The only thing that was different is I didn't mix this one. On the mixing the first record, I spent so much time doing it. I didn't really know what I was doing. I made so many mistakes, spent hours correcting those mistakes. It was a huge learning curve for me. And when I was doing this record, I thought I need this to feel sonically like I can record everything like great and get everything sounding good. And I had really good mixes together, but it was just probably a lack of confidence. I just thought I want it to feel different. I want it to feel like a bit more polished somehow, and a little bit less lo-fi. And that's where Chris Sheldon came in, and he basically was the first. Chris basically, in a natural way, took them. He said, "What do you want me to do with it?" I said, "I've got the mixes sounding really good, and I feel like I'm happy with them. But I just want somebody to take where I've got them and just push them an extra 5-10%." And he did that, not to take anything away from Chris, actually, because he did certain things for mixes that I would never have done, you know. But he kind of took where I left them and pushed them further, which is all you can hope for, really, in a mixer. So I think he had kind of like a significance on the records in terms of like pushing it that little bit further and making it feel like it stepped up a little bit. But I feel like the songwriting had stepped up a little bit as well, and everything became a bit more focused and less kind of caution to the wind, which the first album was, because I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just throwing my heart and soul into the tracks, but I was kind of like, it was warts and all. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it turned out okay. This album features guest appearances. Dave Gahan returns. It was Tim Smith, Isobel Campbell, Ed Harcourt, James Allan, Peter Hayes, Carl Hancox Rux, and more. So how did you decide this time around who you wanted to collaborate with?
The tracks just kind of lend themselves to certain artists. I never think about who I'm writing for when I'm writing the music. I just try and get everything into the tracks and make them sound as fucking amazing as I possibly can. And then when I've got a group of them together, they start to form, the kind of sequencing starts to come together. And that kind of dictates where I go with it. So the first track that I got somebody to sing on was the beginning, was Carl Hancox Rux. And as soon as I had that, I thought, right, I got the first track on the record. And then I started to piece the other ones together. I mean, so yeah, it was very organic. You know, sometimes it's through people I know. Like I kind of worked a little bit with Ed through something, through a Marianne Faithfull tour. And so I messaged him. I said, oh, I've got these tracks. You know, he was interested. I sent Immortal across to begin with. And, you know, and that came back. And then the same with James Allan. I just kind of had this track that I felt was kind of slightly Dylan. It felt a little bit different from what he does normally, but I could really hear his voice on it. So, and I always kind of go down this route of when I get somebody in my head, I can find basically a contact for anyone somehow. And I kind of got a contact for James, and I waited and I just wait for it to feel right, and then I send some across, and generally it kind of works out, or at least I get a response if I do it that way. You know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but mostly it does. So that, yeah, Isobel lives in St. Leonard's, so which is where I'm living, St. Leonard's. So that was kind of like a natural collaboration. They're all people I love and admire and respect. During lockdown, Leah Shapiro, who's the drummer in Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, she reached out to me to say how much she loved the first record. And that kind of started that. We started doing her and Pete started doing a little bit of music together, kind of what would, I guess, was like kind of a little side project, may become a side project at some point. We got about 7 or 8 tracks. But then I said, I've got this track that I'd love Pete to sing on for Humanist, and sent it across, which became Born to Be. And then obviously also we went on to do a track for the Jeffrey Lee Pierce project. I don't know if you know about that or not.
No, I haven't heard that.
From the Gun Club. We did a track. So there's a band from years back, the 80s, called the Gun Club. Don't know if you remember them. Jeffrey Lee Pierce, and there's a tribute album called I think it's called the Jeffrey Lee Pierce Project. And me, Pete, and Leah did a track. It's basically covers of Jeffrey's like tracks and whatnot. And Lanegan was a big fan of that. So of Jeffrey Lee Pierce and the Gun Club in particular. So we but it's all very natural, really.
My favorite track on the album is the second single, Too Many Rivals, featuring Tim Smith. Wow, you know, I really love Tim's voice on that track. It's just a superb song.
I reached out to Tim. I love his voice and everything about him. The subject matters, his writing style, the melodies, the lyrics. Where it shivers, it leaves hope. It's, you know, he just does everything perfect. I wanted to work with him. I had a track in particular that I thought would be perfect to him. I sent it to him. He said, yeah, I like the project. I'm up for it. And he wrestled with this track for ages. His first instinct was like, yeah, I can hear myself singing over this. I've got ideas in my head already. And then generally when somebody says that, you tend to get something back fairly quickly. And then a couple of weeks later, he sent me a message. He was like, oh, I haven't got anything yet. I didn't really like Big where I was going with it, so I've scrapped it, and I'm going to get to it though, you know. And then 2 weeks later, something else, and he sent another email saying, I'm struggling a little bit with it, but something will come. And I just had the track that became Too Many Rivals, and I thought something again. I just thought I had this minute where I go, just send him the track, send him this, and I sent him it, and he was like, yes, this is it. And within a day, he sent me a rough melody straight through. I was like, wow, fucking hell. And he was like, yeah, can we do this one? I said, yeah, 100%, whatever works for you. And so, yeah, a little bit of time passed. He wrote some lyrics that he sent me the verse and the choruses, and they were fantastic. But there was nothing in the middle 8. And I said, oh, have you got anything in the middle 8? And he's like, yeah, I've got this idea, actually. And this was the bit where he kind of, when he sent it back, because to me, it was like almost like Brian Wilson or something, all the harmonies that layer up into the 10. When I first heard it, I was like, wow, fucking hell. It's definitely one of my favorite tracks on the record. One of my proudest moments in the, you know, on the Humanist collaborations. I have a few. I'm super proud of all the people, like all the tracks and the people that I work with. Because they just take they elevate everything that I do. So I get to listen to it in the same way that other people, like listeners, listen to it in a way.
Yeah.
Super pleased with how that track came off.
As mentioned, Dave Gahan returns again with another amazing track, Brother. And you've been touring with Depeche Mode this year. So how's that been? And what can you tell me about the track?
Yeah, the tour was amazing. probably the biggest crowd. Well, absolutely the biggest crowd I've ever played to. It was like 25,000 a night. And I expected them to be like half capacity or something, but they weren't. They were pretty much like, we'd walk out and it'd be like 80, 90% full. And I was like, fuck. And I heard that basically the crowd can be quite tough. The Depeche Mode fans can be quite tough on support bands, but they really embraced us. If I had any nerves, it was about a minute before we walked on the first night. I thought, oh God, what happens if they're really like hard and they start booing us or something like that, you know? But as soon as the lights went down, the crowd just went into a huge roar, and I thought, oh, thank God, because I knew the support was coming on. They didn't know, think for a second that it was Depeche Mode. So it was incredible, an amazing experience. And then Dave again. So basically, Ed got in touch with me after we were speaking a little bit back and forth after Lanegan had passed. And he was like, oh, the track that you sent me, I'm thinking about maybe, I've got this idea that Lanegan always used to call me brother. And I think he used that word a lot. I said, yeah, every time it was always, to me, it was, hey brother, love you brother, that kind of thing. I think he had a lot of, when you were in the circle, he would probably call there was a number of brothers around the world, you know what I mean? Everywhere, different countries, blah, blah, blah. So he kind of touched upon that subject matter and as an idea, as a gentle tribute, basically. And when Ed sent me his vocal back and lyrics, I was like, fuck, man. Yeah, it was such a beautiful, powerful track. And Ed's vocals actually fantastic as well, I have to say. But as time went on and we were getting closer to the record, I knew I wanted to do a track with Dave. And, when you work with somebody like Dave, you want to try and keep, there's so much love and respect there for what he does. And obviously, he's such a powerful figure and it opens a lot of doors for you. And he's very aware of his position as well, But my manager basically said, oh, why don't you ask Dave to sing that track? And I was like, wow, yeah, that would be a fucking great idea. And immediately I sent him the track and immediately got back and said, I love it. Oh, let's do it. And I was like, fuck. And then when Dave sent his vocal back, I was like, fuck, wow. This really, I could feel, when you suddenly, you start something and there's a snowball effect and you can start to feel the energy like picking up in something. And his voice it's just stunning and beautiful. And it makes everything, like Lanegan's, it makes everything sound expensive immediately. And then I tried to further that with, I got Isobel to play cello on it because of her work, that she tried to kind of increase the connection. There's a guy called CS Van Gorkum that did some of Lanegan's string arrangements, and he plays strings on the record, on that particular track. And then I just kind of laid up Ed's vocal and my vocal and Isobel's as well, just to make it this kind of wonderful, beautiful, but gentle tribute to the big man. So, which hopefully it's, it doesn't come across in any kind of like crass swear or anything. Do you know what I mean? And with respect, it's like, because I certainly didn't want to try and in any way kind of cash in on somebody's. Do you know what I mean? It's not where I don't come from that world at all. I leave that to other people. I have tracks that I was working on Lanegan with right up until the end that probably will never see the light of day. There was a couple that we were signed off by him that may do. Do you know what I mean? But in terms of like anything that's kind of a draft element, certainly never ever. It's kind of sacred, isn't it? That stuff. So.
Yeah. The album finishes with The End, featuring Madame Butterfly, which that's you, isn't it?
Never heard of him.
It's a great track, and it's a great track to finish the album. What can you tell me about that?
It was an odd period in my life, if I'm totally honest. A lot of stuff going on. I was dealing with some personal things. Let me see. Basically, not to make a big thing of it, but I had cancer. It was during lockdown, and I got over. That's not. I'm not trying to make something of that. That was just a thing. I'm totally fine now. During that period of time, yeah. But there was a lot of stuff going on at the time, and I lost my best friend, my school best friend from school, who died of cancer. Lanegan had passed, and I just kind of, it was this. I did at the same time The Presence of Haman Whereas kind of, I was just feeling, let me think, just kind of reflecting on, the music that I write is always a reflection of whatever's going on in my life at the time. And so there was what was significant about that is it was kind of like hit a dark period where I felt like that kind of presence of him summed that up, and the end was basically the dark and light to that. There was, in the end, there's hope. And it's about basically the idea that I was thinking about my friend at the time and about somebody passing over to the other side, and that somebody would be there. I had a thing basically that happened to me. I'll explain it and hope that it doesn't sound too cheesy, but I knew my friend wasn't very well, and I went back along to Teesside to visit him. And, I caught up with, there was a 3 or 4 of us that met up with him, and he was really unwell. He was in a lot of pain. And he kind of timed all his painkillers so that when he came and met us, we met him in a bar. And when he timed it all, so basically that he was the best that he could be for like 2 hours. And it seemed like we had like the old Stevie back there. And got to be careful about how I explain this. Anyway, he reached a point in the night and he disappeared. And I had no pairing of, like, he basically bulked himself up a little bit and put some jumpers on and a jacket to make him look like he hadn't lost as much weight. And I went back home, and I sent him a message. I said, "Oh, it's nice to see you, Stevie." And he was like, "Yeah, mate, you too." And I said, "Look, I'm going to be back in a few weeks," or something like that, which was a lie. But I thought, when I saw him, I thought, I'm going to come back and like try and make a bit more. And He said, "Yeah, it'd be good to see you again, mate." And then about a month passed, and I was sat on the settee, just one evening, just watching TV. It was about 10 o'clock, and he just came to me. I just saw him, and he was like, he was in pain, and my eyes. I was with my partner, and I welled up, and I went, "Fucking hell, I've just seen Stevie. He's in pain, And she went, "No, don't be daft." I said, "Honestly, I have. Like, I've something not right. And I hadn't heard of him or texted him. He hadn't texted me. I wasn't even thinking about it. I just thought, oh, Stevie's, Anyway, she went, "Well, message him if you feel." And so I texted him, and that was about 10, I've still got my phone, about 10:23 or something like that. And sure enough, the next day, phone goes at 6 a.m. He passed that night at 10:23, whatever. Or not that specifically that minute, but the message got delivered. It never got read. And it was round about, that time of night. And then so I was thinking it was him. It was there with me for a long time. And when I went to write the end, it was the idea that because I felt something, that maybe there's somebody there with you when you pass over. And the lyrics, although you can't really hear them, it's more of the vocal's more of an instrument. It's essentially, you're not alone. Who's that with you? Somebody's waiting for you. If you might be able to hear that now, but. So yeah, that was it, and I felt that it had hope and light in it, and which I thought was a good way to end the record, because I'm all about that, about good energy, and it doesn't matter where you are, what's going on in your life, however dark things get, there's always a way, there's always light, there's always hope, there's always good energy, and you can always tap into it, and there's. If you just wait for a minute, do you know what I mean? It's things can and things will get better.
Yeah, we always get through it.
Yeah,
we always do. Thanks for sharing that, and I'm glad you're better.
Yeah, thank you.
You recently toured with Jane's Addiction, and I read today actually you're going to be doing more shows next week, along with the Depeche Mode tour. There's lots been happening, and also in October, Humanist will embark on your own UK headline tour. So what can we expect from the show? Which collaborators? Will there be any collaborators from both albums appearing on the tour?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I guess they're a bit far off yet. I haven't really... There definitely will be. But also, it doesn't have to be... For me, it doesn't have to be exclusive to the record. It's like if I'm friends with somebody and they want to get up and play bass, from perhaps a famous Manchester band and they're up for it, I'll ask them. Do you know what I mean? I think Jimmy Necco is probably going to be there in October. James Cox will probably be there for a couple. You know what? If I'm playing Manchester, John Robb's probably, if he's around, he's going to probably turn up. If I'm in Oxford, I haven't even looked at the dates. Mark Gardner, I'll invite anybody down. If we're playing Glasgow, I'll ask James Allan to come along to do his track. That's how it is, really. It'll be as I get closer to it, I'll try and kind of plan it out and keep it. So I'd like to make each day as special as it possibly can be. I can't wait, man. I love playing live. I got really tired of it towards the end of Exit Camp. It felt like we were on repeat and we were just kind of like in some kind of weird echo chamber. But now I really, really love it again. I found that kind of like mojo and I appreciate it so much. Anybody that comes to see us and buy a ticket, I'm so fucking grateful. Even if I'm only in a position where I sell out 150, 200 cap venues, which is amazing, I'm all right with that. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm making the music that I want to fucking make.
How do you see the direction of Humanist evolving in the next few years?
It's a good question. I have pondered on the idea of working with a singer to make it easier. Like a Humanist album featuring so and so. In terms of like, do you mean sound or do you mean just as a general?
In general.
Yeah, I mean, I've pondered on the idea of working with a singer or maybe two, but sound-wise, I'd like to maybe take it from the studio back into a room, because everything that I've been doing on these two records has pretty much been recorded. It's like a studio album. All I've ever done was write in a room. The studio thing is super quick because it's a lot more focused and a lot faster, but I'd like to take the songs out of the studio and record them in a room again. Do you know what I mean? And try and get a live vibe going, I think. So I've got a few ideas floating around. I'm not sure of kind of, once I get my head into writing, I'm pretty committed and connected to that. My head right now is just to be the best guitar player I can be and try and move people in the room.
And apart from the singers you're thinking about, is there anyone else on the wish list that you could collaborate with?
Oh, there's loads. I mean, I'd love to work with Nick Cave. And I have a little story about that towards the end. Lanegan would always, like towards about 2 weeks before he passed, sent me an email and he was like, just checking in, and he was like, how's the new record going? Who do you want to work with? I'll send anything to anyone. And I never asked him for anything. He was always so gracious and generous with his stuff, like to me anyway. He was like, tell me who you want. And he put a list and he was like, and Nick Cave was in there. He was Nick Cave, Iggy Pop, Chrissy Hines, Jimmy Goodwin. I think he was doing something with Chrissy and Jimmy Goodwin at the time. And it was Jason Pierce, something like that. And I remember reading the email. I sat on it for a minute and I thought, fucking hell. He'd already he'd already kind of hooked me up with Dave, and that was massive, So I went back to him and I said, fuck man, thank you so much. Of course, like I'd love that. I do actually have a track that I think Nick Cave would be fucking great on. Nick Cave had just dropped Skeleton Tree. And I had this track that was really felt in that fucking environment or whatever. Sonically, there was something in this track that was similar to that. It's just purely coincidental. And I said, yeah, man, fuck, I got this track. I really think Nick would be good on it. I mean, this doesn't mean, just because he was going to ask, doesn't mean that any of them would ever do it. He was just like, look, I don't mind. I'll send it across to them. Whether they say yes or no, I even listen to it. It's up to, you know what I mean? But he was willing to go that way, you know what I mean, for me. And I said, yeah, I got this track, but I was working at the time. I had a guy called Terry Edwards that plays brass with PJ Harvey and lots of other people. And he was putting some stuff on some tracks for me. He did the saxophone on the beginning and a few other tracks on the record. And I said, I just want to finish this track. I'll get back to you though with it. And he was like, yeah, whatever. Just send me it through whenever you're happy. And obviously I never got to send him it, which was not to say that anything, but yeah, he would have been somebody I would love to work with. Johnny Lydon, John Lydon. I'd love to.
I was going to mention John Lydon. That's weird that you said that.
Yeah. Well, I actually had a bit of back and forth with Rambo, which was John's manager. And And he was like, oh, potentially, yeah, but John's doing this book thing at the moment. Timing was off. And I was like, okay. He was like, get back in touch in like 6 months' time or something like that. Again, and then Rambo passed away, which was, I don't know if you knew that, but it was like John's long-term kind of, yeah. Iggy Pop, of course, would be great. And it's all the people that all the people that I love, really. You know what I mean? It's the list there that Lanegan threw off. You know what I mean? Chrissy Hine, Jimmy Goodwin, Ian McCulloch's there. I had a bit of back and forth with Damon, Badly Drawn Boy at one point. I kind of would like to do a track with him. Perfume Genius. I don't know if you know that, familiar with them, but the bands. Sharon Van Etten. The Lords, man. You know what I mean? It's like an endless wish list. You know? And when it comes to the next record, I'll get there. You know what I mean? I'm sure. It's all about timing for me. There's nobody that when it comes to music, I've got so much self-belief in the music that because I get it to the point where my hairs are standing up on edge, and I know, and I'm moving myself, and then I know that like it's the only thing I'm confident in. I'm such a shy, unconfident person. Still, even stuff like these podcasts have filled me with so much anxiety, and I have no confidence in my ability in terms of communicating and putting messages across, or even feeling like I'm of any interest to anybody whatsoever in terms of the things that I'm saying. It's just like it's just in me. But when it comes to music, I'm so confident in it. It's like if I had a track that I thought would be perfect for Paul McCartney, I would have no. Do you know what I mean? There's no boundaries with it. I just think if the music's right, it doesn't matter who the fuck you are. If it clicks and if you believe in it, and it's sending and you've got to a point where it's really kind of on that sonic, emotional, melodic level where it's sending shivers and hairs standing up, then it will do that. It will translate to somebody else. And if you believe it's going to sound right with this particular collaborator, I'm confident to send it to anybody. You know, I really have got so much belief in that. Because people always say to me, well, how do you have the confidence to send it? It's like, fucking hell, man. It's like, you know, if you don't believe in your own fucking music, forget it. You know, but I do. It's everything. It's everything for me. All my whole self-worth is, like I said, is wrapped up in my music. Everything that I am is that. It's life, and there's no divide between the two. They're totally one, life and music, which is kind of quite sad as well. I realise, but it's my existence. It's everything.
I could even picture Richard Ashcroft. That would be a great collaboration.
Yeah, that's another conversation that's been had over the years. A few kind of, because I did some work with Chris Potter. He worked on Urban Hymns, and then he went on to work on pretty much all Ashcroft's records. And Chris was a fan of Exit Calm. We nearly ended up working with Chris, actually, but we didn't. I don't think the budget was there at the time. But Chris mixed Shot Collar, the last track, Dave Gahan track that I did. And I've kept in touch with Chris. He's such a sweet, decent, good human being, helped me out loads. You know, he's a very, very, very nice guy. So there's a connection there for that Ashcroft route. And I'm sure at some point it'll, you know, if it feels right and the track's right and I have something, and it'll work out, you know.
I like to ask my guests the following questions. For us music fans, music is the soundtrack to your memories. What song or album, when you listen to it, brings back the best memories for you?
Fuck. Brings back the best memories for me?
Yeah.
Can you tell me yours first?
Probably the first time I heard the Stone Roses debut album, and that whole summer. It was just a soundtrack. So it was a very good memory because it was a great summer, and I was just about to leave school. Or
I guess, yeah. I mean, they get so much stick, don't they? The U2s, but Acton Baby's fucking brilliant, man. Isn't it? It's so good.
Yeah,
and also the Edge is like there's no fucker that sounds like the Edge. He is totally uniquely him, and that is totally genius.
Yeah.
God, yeah, it's an interesting question. It's hard because I'm going to end up stealing yours because it was such an influential. The thing is, that period of life for me I was totally engrossed with the music that my brother, and because I was the younger one and I always hung out with my brother and his friends who were 2 years older, so I was the youngest one in the group. But they all had a massive influence on me, and it was kind of like that Britpop era, and the Roses were a massive part of that. Because my music is the music that I write isn't. I don't think it sounds like that. Maybe there's elements of it in there, but yeah, no, I loved that first Stone Roses album. It's so good. It's hard. It's totally within me and my DNA. I mean, it was so influential. The look, the sound, John Squire, Ian, Manny, Rennie, the combination of all those elements together. My favourite song off the record, you tell me what yours is, but mine is "This Is the One." I love it because of I like that dynamic when it hits and it drops back down. That was, to me, that was such a powerful thing that it definitely inspired me, and I took into everything that I do. That impact where, we had it on We're on Our Own and Rapture in Exit Can, where you kind of gentle and then you hit really loud, and it's like, I love those things, do you know what I mean? And they've manifested themselves all the way through all the music that I've done throughout the years and into Humanist, and Lanegan and whatnot.
Mine would probably be "And the Resurrection." Yeah, everything about it, and then the long outro. I just love listening to it with headphones and just all the different changes and stuff. It's fantastic. Last one, Rob. If you could go back and relive one musical moment from your career, what would it be?
Oh, fucking hell. Oh, man. That's a big question.
So maybe go back and experience something again, or go back and change something.
Yeah, well, that enough of a spanner in the works there to change something. There's probably a couple of things I would change, but I don't know, reliving a significant moment. I don't know. I think it might be the Water Rats thing, because it was the first time that like I said, we'd sold out a venue, but there was a minute before we walked on stage. We used to walk onto a track called The Cedar Room, the Doves track.
Yeah, brilliant track.
And it kind of became known that when, from the people, because we had a cult audience, and when we put that track on, there was a few claps, that kind of thing. But this significant gig in particular, where there seemed like a lot of industry there and a lot of interest, and as soon as the Cedar Room came on, I was at the side of the stage in the Water Rats with the drummer at the time, Scott, who's obviously a Humanist. And I don't know where the other two were, but me and him were stood there, and that track came on and the crowd just went crazy. You just heard this like massive roar that I'd never heard for us ever. And I was like, I looked over at him and he looked at me, and we both just started smiling. And you just knew something was in the air that particular night. It was magnificent. It was just special. And it felt like that moment in life where everything was ahead of you and all those opportunities, and it felt exciting and amazing. And that felt, that's something that I always remember. And I think he does as well, Scott. It's quite a significant moment because it was almost like the beginning of everything that was to come and all the potential, and it didn't quite work out for us. The first record was just too far out there. We didn't play the game. We didn't try to kind of focus that sound, have a commercial element. It was all everything like put to the floor, and we didn't give a fuck basically. We just wanted to.
That's what was so good about the first album.
Yeah, exactly. But it unfortunately didn't sell records. It's like, but it is. I'm super proud of it. I'm super proud of the second one as well. The second one was a progression from the first, and that's super important to me. Is to constantly keep moving forward. Right? Why would you ever want to just repeat yourself over and over? It's like you've already done that. We can play that fucking album live. It could be a massive part of the set, but why would you want to repeat yourself? So the idea was always for me to keep moving forward sonically and songs and blah, blah, blah. But it was a huge moment for the band, I think. Whether everybody else thought that or not, but it's something that stuck with me. And we ended up getting Steve Strange from X-Ray that night, which was a massive thing again, because through Steve, we ended up getting all the kind of two supports that were great. You know, we were on tour with Bunny Men and Soul Savers and Modest Mouse, did V Festival, Dubs, Bunny Men, I didn't say that already. So it was kind of like a huge thing, you know what I mean? It felt quite significant.
So that's me done, Rob. Is there anything you would like to mention before we wrap up? Anything coming in the immediate future?
Not really. I think covered quite a lot. I mean, no, I think that's everything. Thank you for making me feel so comfortable, and also thank you for wanting to do it in the first place. Like I said, I never take this stuff for granted, and I always really appreciate anybody trying to spread the word and help. And because I'm on the outside, really. Do you know what I mean? I'm very kind of like small in comparison to the artists that I work with. But it's anything like this is always a huge help for me. So thanks, man.